Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host SM Hali with the program Defense and Diplomacy. Siachen is the highest theater of war in the world, but unfortunately, after 28 years of illegal occupation by the Indian forces, it had nearly become forgotten. But on 7th of April this year, an avalanche claimed 135 victims. We are still not sure about the fate of these people, but the important thing is that the focus has returned on this particular tragedy. Let me not steal the thunder from two very able panelists we have in the studio today to discuss this issue. We have with us Air Marshal Shahid Latif, former Vice Chief of Air Staff and now a renowned defense analyst. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have with us Ambassador Shafqat Kakakhel, who among other capitals has also served in New Delhi, and we hope to benefit from his insight into this issue. Let me start with you, Air Marshal. What is the genesis of this problem that 28 years ago, 13th of April 1984, the Indians occupied this territory?
Okay, to trace out the genesis, you'll have to go back to 1948, which was the time when Pakistan and India had a conflict in Kashmir. And post this 1948 conflict, there was a ceasefire line that was drawn in that area. And this ceasefire line was then agreed upon in a famous agreement which was signed by both parties at Karachi.
The Karachi Agreement.
The Karachi Agreement. The ceasefire line was such that it took you to a map reference point, which is also quite famous, which is NJ9842. And up to that point, it explained, even with the reference of ground locations, as to how this line was drawn. Somehow, there was one liner after that, which said that from this point, this reference point onwards, it will be northwards up to the glaciers.
Northeast.
It said northwards. I will tell you how it turned out to be the northeast. When this was further discussed in the agreement, then this whole northwards disappeared. You know, this understanding that it will be northwards, which was very vague. When they discussed, they came to point, they discussed the entire line, and then there was no reference of northwards. I think the assumption at that time was that this whole area is so inhospitable to human life that one never thought that there will be a dispute between the two countries, and it was left at that point. So like I said, that northwards from this point in the agreement, apparently it did not cause any concern, and it wasn't there to begin with. In the initial part, when it was the ceasefire line, it was there, but when we talked about this line being LOC, and then we discussed various points, then the continuation towards north did not come out as any significant point at all.
No, but why has Pakistan been claiming control of this?
I'll come to that. So I'll come to that. This is just the beginning. Starting from that time, the first time it was highlighted, we had the first UN representative in Pakistan in 1950 who raised a report and put it up to the Security Council. And this was Sir Winston. And he raised this report and mentioned clearly and said that because of the line that had been agreed upon and the natural contours, the placement of the glacier and accessibility to Karakoram ranges, he placed Siachen's control with Pakistan and mentioned it clearly. So that was the first document that was prepared. Then from the Indian side, this was followed up by another very famous writer, Lakhanpal, who in 1958 wrote a book titled Documents and Notes from Kashmir Dispute. And in that, he included Sir Winston's report and he supported it. That was the second reference, important reference. The third reference came out when another Indian writer, defense writer, Ravi Rekhai, in his famous book,
The Fourth
1982,
Round.
The Fourth Round.
The Fourth Round.
The Fourth Round, War between India and Pakistan, 1984. He also made a mention of this, and he clearly placed the glacier under Pakistan's control, giving the same reasons. In between, in 1962, the Indian Prime Minister Nehru stood on the floor, and he...
Actually, if you permit,
Yeah.
this was after the Indo-China War of 1962.
Yes.
In 1963, when Pakistan signed the Pak-China Agreement,
Yes.
then
Yes,
Prime Minister Nehru, you please
Yes,
go on.
the Pak-China agreement was signed, and in that the Chinese agreed and showed this demarcation of the glacier within Pakistan territory.
But the incident you're talking about is that in the Lok Sabha,
Yes.
he was asked, the Indian Prime Minister was asked, why has this been achieved?
Yes.
So what was his response?
His response was that this is very much natural, and he was convinced, like I said, that because of the accessibility to the Karakoram and onwards to the glacier, the routes that emanated, started from Pakistan, he was convinced that Pakistan should exercise control on this area. And a person no less than the Prime Minister of India in 1962 is on record as having said that the glacier is part of the northern areas of Pakistan. So I have quoted to you at least 4 different references.
If you permit, let me
Yes.
solicit the opinion of His Excellency the Ambassador. Sir, he mentioned Nehru, but there have been other instances, international references, because the permission for international expeditions into that territory was always sought from Pakistan, and as such the international atlases and maps showed it as a part of Pakistan. Would you like to comment on that, sir?
Yes, obviously, that is the case, and the one instance that is very well known, and it is also quoted by the Indians in a negative manner, is the U.S. Geospatial Intelligence Center. In their maps, Siachen is in fact shown as being under the control, or Pakistan having a kind of commanding position over Siachen. So as far as international recognition of this position is concerned, there has been no doubt. Of course, the Indians...
All the atlases, the National Geographic, the
Absolutely.
Britannica, the Time Magazine, the
All
University of Chicago, and they all showed very clearly that this was under the control of Pakistan.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then when the Indians made the incursion, of course, they have tried to make a case, and they have been building up this case. Initially, they accused Pakistan of what they called cartographic aggression, that by showing Siachen in the maps, which were basically available to provided to the mountaineers and the expeditions and all, Pakistan was making a cartographic aggression and asserting its position. Later on, of course, they beefed up their position by saying in the 90s, they were saying, well, one advantage of keeping Pakistan engaged in Siachen is to punish them for their very low cost activity in Kashmir. More recently, we've seen the memoirs of the former RAW chief, Mr. Sood, who has said that actually the purpose was to deny, to scuttle Pakistan's attempts to gain access to Tibet and Ladakh, and also to provide China with an easy route.
That is preposterous. Why would Pakistan be interested in Ladakh?
Well, this is exactly, I mean, you have to have some evidence of an interest. In fact, Pakistan had not in any way manifested its position vis-a-vis Siachen. In fact, between 1962 and the mid-70s, Pakistan had not even allowed or given permission to mountaineers. And most of the mountaineers who came, particularly for Everest, they went to Nepal. However, in 1976, Pakistan allowed a British expedition, a very well-known mountaineer, and subsequently set up a system and provided Sherpas and other facilities to the mountaineers. Other than that, Pakistan had not taken any step to demonstrate its so-called ownership or commanding position.
Or even hegemonic designs.
Absolutely.
Coming back to the air marshal, now 13th of April 1984, India occupies it. And of course, Pakistan tried to wrest it back. But the Indians were at an advantageous position. And being a military man, you appreciate that the terrain plays a major role. And since then, we have had tremendous casualties, although in 2003 we have had the ceasefire. But it is the weather, the inclement weather, the terrible blizzards that claim more lives. And I believe over 5,000 lives have been lost, out of which the figure for Pakistan is less than 1,000, but for India it is more than 4,000.
Yes.
Still, they persist. Why?
To begin with, let me say that it wasn't really that Pakistan went to fight and recapture the area. It was they simply moved in late because the Indians took initiative, and they are the aggressors. They just decided to go occupy those heights. And in terms of time, when you move late, there was only that much left. You know, if it was for the Indians, they would have, I think, taken the whole of it. So, if roughly speaking, it was about 2/3 with them, and 2/3 which is the heights. And like you said, that you enjoy a tactical position when you are at height. So they enjoy this position. And if you were now to fight, you are fighting from a position of weakness, from a position of disadvantage. So I don't think that any amount of fight will really get you back those heights. Once again, you said that India is hell-bent upon retaining occupation of that place, in spite of the fact that there's not only a huge loss of human life, the expenditure they incur is horrendous. And what are you really achieving? If one was to ask, what are the benefits that you get by occupying and retaining that land, I would say nil.
No, but the sad part is that the Indians are spending much more than us. They are losing many more lives than us. In fact, you see, we have a natural advantage because of the passes which you mentioned, and that was, of course, the
Yes.
genesis of the whole thing, that we had natural incursions into it. So Indians have had to beef up their airfield at Thois. They've had to build an helicopter, Mi-17
They have made many other staging posts. They are well organized there.
But their daily cost runs in millions.
Yes.
And it is the Indian public which has been demanding that what is the purpose of this standoff. But yet, you see, there are people like Jasjit Singh, Air Commodore Jasjit Singh, formerly the head of ITSA, who said that what the ambassador was just saying, that Pakistan should be punished and cost-benefit analysis can come later.
Yes.
So this kind of...
So this is purely being egoistic. In this case, when I mentioned Nehru, you can understand the approach of a politician. And what I hear is that politically, even today, there is a school of thought that says that there's no point really remaining there and bleeding your economy and losing so many lives. It is inexplicable. But it is the military, it is the army particularly. I think maybe the only time that the army has come up and said that, look, we achieved it with a great difficulty, and somehow this is now being a matter of egoism. They just want to be there and project that they are powerful, and the same mentality about Pakistan, intransigence, high-headedness. I think these are the factors that just force them to stay there.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no logical explanation.
No, but
really.
if you permit, Ambassador, if you recall in 1989 when Rajiv Gandhi was visiting Pakistan and Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto Shahid was the Prime Minister, both young Prime Ministers, very outward looking, had nearly reached an agreement. In fact, all was to be done was that Rajiv Gandhi goes back to New Delhi and makes an announcement that the troops will withdraw. But what happened after that? It didn't come about.
Well, the meeting of the young prime ministers was preceded by meetings of not so young officials. And as a result of those meetings in New Delhi and in Islamabad, there was a broad understanding on the principle of withdrawal. Both sides agreed that they will withdraw. However, it is fair to add that the Indians, even at that time, not of course at the level of the Prime Minister, but at the level of officials, senior officials, insisted on recording exactly where the troops were at the moment. And as we were discussing, India occupies 2/3 of the
In military
glaciers.
parlance or diplomatic parlance, authenticating the positions.
Yes. And we had problems with that. We had problems with that because we said, first, it's legitimizing aggression in a document, and second, you could always say, look, if I was at a particular position, then should this or that happen, I have a right to return to that. But I understand that Pakistan is willing to consider an appropriate way of recording what happened.
But in 1999, if you recall, sir, and I believe you were there, it was also the election year. And some advisors of Rajiv Gandhi told him that the photographs of the Indian troops withdrawing from there will look bad for your election campaign. And that gave him cold feet.
Absolutely. So there was a position from the politicians. But most of our Indian friends who have been coming here, we've recently had Shashi Tharoor, who was a deputy minister, and Mani Shankaraya. They're both in their public statements or the occasions when they spoke to the people, they conceded that the main problem was the insistence of the Indian Army that this spectacular achievement by the Indian Army should not be undone. But formally, I should mention that Siachen is one of the 8 topics which are in the basket of issues in the composite dialogue that was set up in 2003, and there have been discussions, of course, inconclusive. And what we hope is that this
only on Siachen we have had 12 talks, and the 13th is in the near future. Marshal, this tragedy which struck on 7th of April, and it's a major human tragedy. But the thing is that if you recall Lieutenant General Chibber, who was commanding the Northern Command from India and was responsible for Siachen, he's been quoted by Bere in his article, Frozen War between India and Pakistan in the New York Times. And he quotes General Chibber, that we thought that we were there only for this summer. But later on, we had to continue there. We were not even prepared as far as apparel was concerned, as far as mountaineering gear was concerned. And that is why their losses continue to be extremely high. And now, it is pathetic that Lieutenant General Chibber has become one of the biggest proponents for peace and goes about talking about the futility of war. And there are peaceniks on our side also who, after this incident, are talking about unilateral withdrawal from there. What, sir, is your opinion?
This is very unfortunate. I think people who do not have sufficient knowledge have just surfaced and are proposing solutions that are absolutely ridiculous. See, there's a cost for respect for your sovereignty that you have to pay, and if you have to look at the attitude of your adversary, starting from the Kashmir problem, look at all issues. Even on this, if they thought that they were there temporarily and they were to go back, and they haven't, what does it show? That over a period of time, the stance is hardened. And should you be doing this when the whole world is talking about, and on the face of it, they also claim that they're not for confrontation, they are for reconciliation. That is what the world wants today. And in order to move forward, we are two neighbors, both nuclear part. And is it wise on our part to be engaged in hot spots like this, rather than reduce these we are adding to these. And then over a period of time, as we say, there isn't much return out of this, and yet it is pure intransigence that is keeping them over there. For us to say that there should be a unilateral withdrawal doesn't make no sense. And it has to be resolved with dialogue, and there must be a dialogue between the two sides. Their latest stance is even harder than before. When they talk of authentication, there is a catch to it. And beyond, they've gone actually beyond authentication, and now they are talking of delineation. So behind this whole game is the attempt to get the LOC regularized, which remains disputable, and not only that, to extend it and to occupy places where they have been, and to gain a favorable decision out of this.
Which of course is absolutely contrary to the spirit of the United Nations resolutions and the thoughts and aspirations of the Kashmiri people. And we, sir, should never agree to a unilateral decision.
We have only been asking that Kashmir should be resolved as per the resolutions and not as per our aspirations. And that is what has not been accepted. So there are UN resolutions. And on this also, like I said, that the first person to write in our favor about this glacier being part of our northern areas was a UN representative in Pakistan and India. So the whole thing started from there. And that is where the line went northeast, because they thought that this was legitimately under the control of Pakistan.
Okay. Sir, for a closing comment, what should be the way forward?
There is no option other than the two countries negotiating the solution of the problems. There are 8 clusters of problems which were identified in the composite dialogue. And I hope that this recent tragedy will be a powerful message to both countries, but more to the Indian government, whose stubbornness is mainly responsible for perpetuating this conflict, to activate the process so that this problem can be resolved, and so that we can cut down on human losses, we can cut down on the colossal environmental losses that are inflicted by this conflict.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this discussion. The tragedy which has occurred on the avalanche of Siachen at the position of Gehari is tremendous. 135 lives lost in one go is not an infinitesimal figure. And we have to think about the families and the dependents of those people who have made this sacrifice. But the important thing is that there is no cost, no sacrifice which is less or small for your sovereignty, for peace. So let this be a lesson to people on both sides of the divide, that we are fighting for a territory, and it is the nature and inclement weather which is taking its toll. So the important thing is to withdraw, to demilitarize, and find a solution on peaceful means. If that happens, then this particular sacrifice would not have been in vain. I would like to thank you, Air Marshal Shahid Latif and Ambassador Shafqat Kakakhel, for your very cogent comments. And viewers, keep watching us. Hope to see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.